On December 13th, 2003, a man who had once commanded the fourth largest army on Earth was hiding in a hole smaller than a grave.
On this day in 2003, U.S. troops captured Saddam Hussein. The former Iraqi president was found hiding in a small bunker near his hometown.
Above him, 600 American soldiers searched every inch of farmland along the Tigris River. They had satellites, drones, and the most advanced military technology ever created. But none of it mattered. The real breakthrough came from a shaken prisoner in custody, whose quiet mistake revealed something no machine ever could, and what he gave away sealed Saddam's fate forever. The spider hole. The night was completely black. Not a single star pierced through the thick clouds hanging over the farmlands near Ad-Dor, roughly 10 miles south of Tikrit. Task Force 121, an elite unit combining Delta Force operators with intelligence specialists from multiple agencies, moved through the darkness in complete silence. These battle-hardened men had been hunting Saddam Hussein for 8 exhausting months. They had conducted 12 raids specifically targeting him. Every single one had ended in failure and bitter frustration.
Hussein was hiding. The arrest was a huge victory for U.S. forces battling an insurgency by the ousted dictator's followers.
Colonel James Hickey, commander of the 1st Brigade Combat Team of the 4th Infantry Division, watched the operation unfold from his command vehicle. He was a decorated officer who had graduated from Virginia Military Institute in 1982 and earned 3 early promotions throughout his career. That night, he commanded roughly 600 soldiers spread across multiple objectives. The operation had been codenamed Red Dawn, a reference to the 1984 film about American resistance fighters. The first target location came up empty. Hearts sank. The second target was also a dry hole. The soldiers were exhausted, and their frustration was boiling over. Each time, the ace of spades slipped away like smoke through their fingers. But that night was different. In the back of an armored Humvee sat a heavy-set man whose eyes were wide with pure terror. His name was Mohammed Ibrahim Omar al-Muslit. He was the head of Saddam Hussein's personal security network. And just hours earlier, after an intense interrogation that pushed him to his breaking point, he had sworn he would lead them directly to Saddam. The convoy arrived at a small mud hut that looked like it belonged to a poor shepherd. Delta Force operators stormed the buildings. They tore apart the rooms. They swept through the orange grove. Nothing. Minutes crawled by like hours. Was the intelligence wrong again? In a moment of desperation, the commander ordered Mohammed Ibrahim brought forward. The prisoner walked past the confused soldiers and moved toward a pile of dirt and garbage near a palm tree. Without a word, he kicked the ground with his boot. The soldiers brushed away the debris and discovered a styrofoam panel with handles. One soldier pulled the pin on a grenade, but then a voice emerged from below. "Do not shoot. Please, do not kill me." 2 filthy hands rose from the black hole. The soldiers grabbed them and pulled.
Swept into Baghdad and toppled Saddam's regime. Hussein was later sentenced to death by hanging.
A man emerged from the earth like a corpse rising from its grave. He had a long gray beard and wild, matted hair. His bloodshot eyes blinked painfully in the harsh flashlight beams, unable to adjust after so long in darkness. He looked nothing like the powerful dictator who had once ruled 25 million people with absolute authority. He looked like a broken, homeless beggar who had lost everything he ever possessed. He dusted himself off and spoke in English with a voice that sounded hollow. "I am Saddam Hussein. I am the president of Iraq, and I want to negotiate." A soldier replied with words that would echo through history. "President Bush sends his regards." But the capture of Saddam Hussein did not begin on that December night. It began 9 months earlier, in a sweltering interrogation room where a low-ranking sergeant was about to tear up everything the Pentagon believed. The deck of cards. April 2003 was supposed to be Victory Month. Baghdad had fallen. The statues of Saddam had been pulled down by cheering crowds. But in the world of military intelligence, the Americans were losing badly. On April 11th, Army Brigadier General Vincent Brooks stood before cameras in Qatar and revealed a new weapon in the hunt for Saddam. It was not a missile or drone. It was a simple deck of playing cards featuring the 52 most wanted regime members. Saddam was the ace of spades, staring out with those cold, dark eyes. His sons Uday and Qusay were the ace of hearts and clubs. Soldiers carried these cards everywhere, memorizing faces during downtime. By August, 37 of the 55 targets had been captured or killed. On July 22nd, Uday and Qusay were killed in a fierce firefight in Mosul after a businessman revealed their location for $30 million. But there was a devastating problem. None of the captured officials knew where Saddam was hiding. When Abid Hamid Mahmoud, the ace of diamonds and one of Saddam's closest aides, was captured in June, he delivered crushing news. He and Saddam's sons had parted ways with the dictator after Baghdad fell. Saddam believed they could survive longer if separated. Every face on every card was useless for finding him. The Americans had made a fundamental error. They assumed Saddam would trust his ministers and officials. But Saddam had spent decades building a regime founded on paranoia. When he needed to disappear, he did not turn to politicians. He turned to blood. He went back to his tribe. And in a cramped interrogation room at Tikrit Airfield, a young sergeant was about to figure out what an entire intelligence apparatus had missed. The invisible network. Staff Sergeant Eric Maddox did not look like a war hero. He was a soft-spoken interrogator for the Defense Intelligence Agency who spoke Chinese Mandarin and had spent most of his career at embassies far from any battlefield. Iraq was his first field assignment, his first taste of actual war. He arrived in July 2003 and was immediately sent to Tikrit to work with Task Force 121. Maddox studied the organizational chart, showing all the deck of cards faces, the generals with their medal-covered chests, the ministers with their expensive suits. His colleagues were focused on extracting information from these high-value targets. But Maddox had a different theory. He stepped forward and tore the chart down from the wall. His superiors thought he had lost his mind. A dictator on the run does not trust his ministers, he explained. He only trusts blood, family, tribe, people who have known him since childhood. Maddox began interrogating people the army considered worthless. Drivers who had ferried officials around Baghdad, cooks who had prepared meals in government buildings, mechanics, gatekeepers, and he refused to use torture. This was the dark era of enhanced interrogation techniques, when the shadow of Abu Ghraib hung over every facility. But Maddox developed what he called empathy-based listening. If you are torturing somebody, you are just stupid, he explained. You solve his problems, and he will solve yours. There are no emotions in true empathy. Empathy is simply understanding what another person needs. Through hundreds of interrogations, Maddox mapped a hidden network nobody else had noticed. Prisoners would not discuss military secrets, but would freely talk about social connections. Drinking buddies, distant relatives, business partners. Red lines formed across his whiteboard. Every line led to one family, the Muslits. The al-Muslit family shared a great-grandfather with Saddam Hussein. They were Tikriti tribesmen who had known him since youth. When Maddox examined a list of former bodyguards, 40 Muslits appeared. At the center of this network sat one name, Mohammed Ibrahim Omar al-Muslit. He was a colonel in Saddam's Special Security Organization and the personal bodyguard who had been with Saddam since Baghdad fell. Task Force 121 called him the Fat Man. But finding Mohammed Ibrahim proved nearly impossible. He moved like a ghost, always one step ahead. Then a seemingly insignificant detail changed everything. Following the fish. 4 months before the capture, Maddox sat across from a nervous man who had once served as Saddam Hussein's personal chef. The chef was eager to cooperate, hoping useful information might lead to better treatment. He revealed something that seemed trivial at first. Saddam had an obsession with a traditional grilled fish called maskouf. He could not go more than a few days without eating it, no matter how dangerous his situation became. Maskouf was Iraq's beloved national dish, a freshwater carp prepared the same way for over 4,500 years. Maddox filed this information away and waited. Weeks later, Mohammed Ibrahim's 18-year-old son mentioned that his father enjoyed fishing and often visited a fish farm near Samarra. In Maddox's mind, the pieces clicked together. Saddam's inner circle could not access public fish markets because they were being watched. Someone had to be raising fish privately. The Fat Man was not just a bodyguard. He was the provider. Special forces launched a rapid raid on the fish farm near Samarra based on this new lead. Mohammed Ibrahim was not there when they arrived. Once again, he had slipped through the net just hours before. But the raid was far from a complete failure. The soldiers discovered a stunning $1.9 million in neatly bundled American cash hidden at a nearby rental house. They also captured 2 terrified fishermen who broke down during questioning and confessed they had been hired specifically to stock a private pond for Saddam Hussein himself. The trail was getting warmer with each passing day. More interrogations followed in rapid succession. A nephew gave up the name of Ibrahim's driver. The driver revealed a business partner. The business partner disclosed a Baghdad address in the busiest part of the city. It was December 12, 2003. Maddox's bags were packed. His flight home was scheduled for 8 o'clock the next morning. He had one final night. Delta Force raided the Baghdad apartment and captured 4 hooded men. At first glance, none appeared to be Mohammed Ibrahim. Then, at 2 o'clock in the morning, one of the fishermen confessed that the Fat Man had been with him when captured. Maddox raced to the holding area. He pulled hoods off one by one. First face, not him. Second face, not him. Third face. A heavy-set man with a distinctive cleft chin stared back with terror in his eyes. Maddox spoke calmly. "You are Mohammed Ibrahim. I have been waiting to meet you." Now, only one step remained, and Maddox had just hours before his flight departed, and the opportunity vanished forever. The Fat Man. The interrogation began immediately, with no time wasted on preliminary procedures. Maddox understood he had no time for traditional techniques that might take weeks. His flight was leaving in mere hours, so he made an offer that violated every protocol in the military handbook. He promised to release every member of Ibrahim's family who had been detained over the past months. Nearly 40 people sitting in various prisons across Iraq. All he wanted in exchange was one thing: Saddam Hussein. Ibrahim hesitated. He understood what Saddam would do if he discovered this betrayal. But Maddox applied pressure with words, not violence. "When I leave in a few hours, nobody else will make you this offer. You become just another terrorist rotting in prison. Your family stays locked up forever. I need him now." The official narrative described what happened next as psychological warfare, a promise of $25 million and family safety. But this was the era of enhanced interrogation techniques. What truly broke Ibrahim's resistance may never be fully known. What we know is that his position changed completely. "We have to go right now," he insisted. "If we wait, he will move." The convoy rolled out at 7:30 that evening. Mohammed Ibrahim never received the $25 million reward. Since the information came through interrogation rather than voluntary tip, he was disqualified. But he was released early, retrieved hidden money from Syria, and built a new life in Eastern Europe. But to understand why Saddam was hiding on that particular farm, we must travel back 235 days to the moment when the most powerful man in the Middle East became a homeless fugitive. 235 days in hiding. April 9th, 200.3 was the last day Saddam appeared in public. He stood on a car hood in Baghdad as American tanks entered the city. Behind him, a convoy of 65 vehicles prepared to flee north toward Tikrit. Contrary to American media reports, Saddam did not live like a rat scurrying between holes. He maintained a network of 20 to 30 safe houses. He never used a phone because he knew Americans were listening for his voice. But as months passed, doors began closing. Fear of American retribution proved stronger than tribal loyalty. One by one, old friends turned him away. As a last resort, Saddam turned to the Namik family, humble Tikriti clansmen who had known him since 1959. Their farm near Ad-Dar was a run-down compound with a two-room shack containing beds, a refrigerator, and no bathroom. The perfect hiding place because nobody would expect a former ruler to live in such poverty. There was a profound historical irony to this location. On October 7th, 1959, the young Saddam had participated in a failed assassination attempt on the Prime Minister. He was shot in the leg and escaped to Tikrit, famously claiming to have swum across the Tigris River. That legendary swim became a myth of his rise to power. The farmhouse where he was captured in 2003 sat just a few hundred yards from that same riverbank.
2003, U.S. troops captured Saddam Hussein. The former Iraqi president was found hiding in a small bunker near his hometown.
The site of his greatest legend became the site of his greatest humiliation. For 235 days, farmer Ala Namik served as everything to the fallen dictator. He was Saddam's cook, preparing simple meals in the primitive kitchen. He was his barber, trimming the beard and hair. He was his bodyguard and his only courier to the outside world, carrying messages to resistance commanders and returning with their replies. He dug the famous spider hole, about 6 feet deep, with packed earth walls, a styrofoam lid, and a small ventilation pipe. A single fluorescent light provided the only illumination in that underground coffin. It was designed for survival, not living. Whenever American patrols approached, Saddam grabbed his Glock and dropped into darkness. When they passed, he climbed back out. Saddam was not passive during hiding. He wrote poetry, recorded audio messages for the insurgency, and sent letters urging tribal leaders to wage jihad against the Americans. He believed he might return to power, but even the safest systems have a weakness: trust. A few weeks before the capture, Mohammed Ibrahim visited the farm. He was head of security, but did not know about the spider hole. When Saddam left the room briefly, Ibrahim asked Allah a simple question. If soldiers raid this place, where does the boss hide? Allah trusted Ibrahim completely. He described the hideout and pointed to its location. Because of that single moment of misplaced trust, 600 American soldiers now knew exactly where to look. Operation Red Dawn.
In 2003, Saddam Hussein was captured by the U.S. forces in Iraq. The soldiers captured him during a raid on a farmhouse.
The convoy halted in darkness. Operation Red Dawn entered its final phase. 600 soldiers established a cordon around the target. Delta Force moved toward the compound. They had performed this mission 12 times before, 12 failures. But this time, they had Mohammed Ibrahim. The operators stormed the buildings. They tore apart rooms and swept through the orange grove. Nothing. Colonel Hickey felt the familiar sinking sensation of another failure. Then the order went out. Bring the prisoner forward. Mohammed Ibrahim walked to a spot near a palm tree, looked down, and kicked a pile of debris. The gate to hell swung open. When Saddam emerged, he reportedly spat in Ibrahim's face, the ultimate gesture of contempt in Arab culture. But it changed nothing. The man who had terrorized a region for 3 decades was now a prisoner with dirt on his face. Found on him was an unloaded Glock pistol, $750,000 in cash, and documents outlining his network. The Glock would later sit in a glass case in the Oval Office before moving to the Bush Presidential Library. The Americans released humiliating footage of Saddam being examined like a horse at auction, a medic checking his hair for lice. The message was clear. He is not the monster you feared. He is just a tired old man who hid in a hole. The next day, Paul Bremer spoke 4 words replayed millions of times. Ladies and gentlemen, we got him. Saddam's trial began in October 2005, focusing on the Dujail massacre of 1982 when he ordered the killing of 148 Shiite men and boys. 3 defense lawyers were murdered during proceedings, a grim reminder that violence had not ended with his capture. On November 5, 2006, he was sentenced to death by hanging. The execution occurred at approximately 6 o'clock in the morning on December 30, 2006, the first day of Eid al-Adha, one of Islam's holiest days. Iraqi law explicitly stated death sentences could not be carried out on religious holidays. The execution chamber felt like mob revenge, not a state proceeding. Guards chanted the name of Muqtada al-Sadr, the Shiite cleric whose father Saddam had killed. Saddam responded with bitter sarcasm. Muqtada, is this how you show your manhood? He began reciting the Shahada, the Islamic declaration of faith. The trapdoor opened before he could finish. His last word was Muhammad. The capture was a masterpiece of patient intelligence work, not technology or firepower. It was 5 months of methodical interrogation by one determined sergeant who understood that tribal connections matter more than organizational charts. Eric Maddox received the Legion of Merit and Bronze Star for his crucial role. He later wrote a book called Mission Blacklist No. 1 and became a speaker on leadership and negotiation. But the story did not end in victory. The debathification orders disbanded 250,000 to 400,000 Iraqi soldiers in a single stroke. These unemployed, humiliated men became the foundation for something far worse. At least 12 ISIS leaders, including Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi himself, served time at Camp Bakr, the American prison where former regime officers and jihadists were held together. What do you think? Was the fall of Saddam Hussein a genuine victory for justice and human rights? Share in the comments below.